This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. In a previous video, I showed how to knit this button band, which is what we call a sideways folded stockinette band. This is stockinette. It's not ribbing. I can put my finger in it. It's basically a hem. And I knitted it this way, and I knitted a buttonhole into it. Actually, the buttonhole is done with a little bit of sewing. Well, that's one kind of button band. The other kind of folded stockinette band might be knitted vertically. You see, these stitches are going sideways. These stitches are going vertically. Let me zoom in so you can see that. See how those stitches are vertical? Now, to keep the video from being too terribly long, we're just going to knit and sew one buttonhole. They're all done the same way. I'm making this sample button band big so it's easy to see on camera, and you might find it very helpful to do a big sample yourself so it's easy for you to see as you sew. Now you knit whatever number of rows you want to do before a buttonhole, and then you bring out the stitches on each side of the band that are going to be the buttonhole stitches. Those needles have to be on both sides because this band is going to be folded, and we need an opening here and an opening here that are going to meet up. Then you take a strongly contrasting piece of yarn. Very helpful to have a good contrast. It makes it easier to see. And I'm not using ravel cord. The reason I'm not is it's just so slippery if I use ravel cord, and I like this yarn. It kind of stays put. It's a little bit scratchy. So it's regular yarn and not ravel cord. And you could use colors or do whatever you want that makes it easier for you to see it. So I have just knitted those 4 stitches through on pieces of yarn, and I'm going to do some more rows. Well, that's enough rows for me, so I'm just going to bind off, and it's a little sample. It shows how to make one buttonhole. You'll probably want to make several for practice, and I showed you a larger button band earlier, but for the purpose of the video we're going to do one simple buttonhole, and I'm just binding off my sample. You don't have to. Wouldn't matter if your sample was raggedy, but my samples tend to get kept a while, and you might want to keep yours too. Here's my finished swatch. It will be folded like this, and these brown patches will become the buttonhole. This will be joined to this side below the buttonhole, and this will be joined to this side above the buttonhole. Now this is done from the wrong side. Just turn the knitting this way, curl it down like this, and fold it. I'm folding mine so that the waste yarn is tucked to the inside. Those little tails are out of my way. Now you can clearly see that you have an outer row of loops and an inner row of loops. Inner, outer. We are going to begin by Kitchenering this outer row of loops to this outer row of loops. Now, one of the secrets to doing this is to take an extra stitch at the beginning and the end of this seam. And the first loop that we're going to work with should be this, because it's the first loop with the waste yarn, but we actually go an extra stitch before that loop and go to the other side and just get an extra stitch. Now we go do typical Kitchener stitch, but using only the outer loops. So we go in this loop right here, and then we go back in the loop we came from. if you haven't done Kitchener stitch before, I have a video on that you might want to work before you try to master this buttonhole technique. But this is exactly the same technique you use for closing a toe or for grafting knitting generally, an invisible seam. Now I go from this loop where the yarn came out to the next loop over, go across and reuse that loop. I like to draw this up a little bit tight, outer loop to outer loop, because this stitching will fit into the inside of this buttonhole, so you don't want it to be loose or sloppy. And a little bit of brown thread. Now, this loop, back over to the previously used loop, and this loop, back over to the previously used loop, so it's always a new loop to a used loop. This loop here, across to the previously used loop, and this loop here, I am avoiding sewing into or splitting my contrasting yarn. And then this loop. Now you might think you're finished, but remember the rule about an extra stitch? Grab an extra loop on this side and then come back to this loop and get an extra loop on this side, come back to this loop. Now you're ready to move on. What you're going to do is look at how this is folded. You're going to put your fingers in here and pop it in like that. And the yarn, which is coming from this inside corner, I'll just bring through so that it's available to use on this side. Now what I need to do is sew these remaining loops to these remaining loops. But once again, I'm going to go ahead and get an extra loop to the left, in my case, or as you face it, to the right, extra loop before, and start there, and then just Kitchener using that extra loop for that first one, and then moving on and Kitchenering in the usual way on across my few stitches. It's only a 4-stitch wide buttonhole. Now you will find that after you sew these stitches that you'll have a tail of yarn close to where you began, and you can run the yarn through and tie the beginning to the end, clip it short. The yarn will be hidden inside the buttonhole band. It will not show. Now that I've got a stitch in every one of those, I still need to catch an extra stitch, and I just choose any random horizontal bar that's right near where I am and use that. And do the same thing on the other side as well. Now my buttonhole is sewed. Let's see what I've got. If I take this and open it, there's my buttonhole, and the brown yarn is actually depressed. It's pushed in by the way that the buttonhole's sewed. And you just grab a bit of the brown yarn with your needle, give it a tug. You can get that right out. Even if you split it, you can pull it out a strand at a time. It's not hard to get out. When you flip it over, there's more waste yarn to remove, so I get a little bit of it. Once I've got it, give it a tug and out it comes. And look at this terrific buttonhole. Even if you put your finger in it and open it out so you can see, it's like folded stockinette, isn't it? It's just like that. and it looks good on both sides. So that's how to do a Kitchener stitch buttonhole in a band that has been knitted vertically.